Today we're talking about relative clauses. Relative clauses, to use them we need to be able to know about relative pronouns. Relative pronouns are words like who, which, where, when, whose and that. Who we use when we talk about people, which when we talk about things or places, where when we talk about places, when for times, whose for possession and that for people or things. So relative clauses give extra information to a sentence. We add them in if we have something else that we want to say on top of the main point of the sentence. I like cooking for people who enjoy my food. So in this sentence, who enjoy my food is the relative clause. I like cooking for people, the people who enjoy my food. We use who because we're talking about people. My green coat, which I've had for years, is falling apart. Again, we're talking about the coat. We're saying how long you've had it, but the main point of the sentence is that it's falling apart. It's extra information. We use which because we're talking about a thing, my coat. We can also use relative clauses to join two sentences together without repeating something. So here we have two sentences about an old lady. I tried to help an old lady. The old lady was trying to cross the road. Now, we say old lady twice. So in these two sentences, old lady is mentioned twice. So what we can do with our relative pronoun, with our relative clause, is we can change the old lady for a relative pronoun, and then suddenly it becomes much quicker. The old lady, we can swap for who. I tried to help an old lady who was crossing the road. Relative clauses always come immediately after the thing that they are adding information to, or the thing that they are qualifying. So here, I like cooking for people who enjoy my food. So here, we're talking about the people. So people who enjoy my food, we are talking about the people. My green coat, which I've had for years, is falling apart. Again, here we are talking about the coat. So it comes straight after coat. I tried to help an old lady who was trying to cross the road. So it's the old lady we're helping. So that's why it comes straight after the old lady. Now this one here, my green coat, which I've had for years, is in the middle. So if you're adding information to something at the beginning of the sentence, then your relative clause will go in straight after it in the middle of the sentence. The man whose dog ate my hat shouted at me. So we know which man it is because this relative clause here comes straight after the man, so we know we're talking about the man. The man shouted at me. There are two different types of relative clauses. The first type we're going to talk about are non-defining relative clauses. So this is one where the sentence will still make sense even if you don't have the extra information. So we can take it out and it still makes sense. So for example, my sister who lives in London is coming to stay next week. We can take away who lives in London and the sentence, my sister is coming to stay next week, still makes perfect sense. The next one, the steak, which was staggeringly expensive, tasted of old boots. Again, take out the relative clause, the steak tasted of old boots. It still makes sense. That's what the sentence is about. The fact that it was very expensive is extra information. Now, another thing I should point out is when we use non-defining relative clauses and we have extra information, we use commas. And the commas show that this is extra information that we don't really need. It's just there to make it more interesting, just to give us a better picture. The other type are defining relative clauses. These sentences need the extra information to make sense. Okay, you can't take it out because then you end up with something that doesn't fully explain. So I left my keys in the bag that you put in the car. If we take away that you put in the car, then we've got I left my keys in the bag. Which bag? I don't know which bag. So this is the information. The information tells us which bag it is. This is the shirt whose label fell off. If you just had a sentence that said this is the shirt, I don't know which shirt you're talking about, but if we've already talked about one where the label dropped off, now I know. This is the shirt whose label fell off. We use whose here because the label belongs to the shirt. It's possession. Verbs and relative clauses must always have a subject. Sometimes there won't be one, and so you use the relative pronoun instead. So this one, I tried to help a child who was crying. So the main verb in your relative clause here is crying. Who was crying? The child. So we don't have child twice, so that the child was crying. I tried to find the hat that I lost. So the main verb in our relative clause here is lost. Who did the losing? I did. The boy who we invited to tea. Again, the main verb in the relative clause is invited. Who invited? The boy. We invited the boy. And then finally, the boy who came to tea was very sick. So main verb here is came. Who came? The boy. Okay. Now, when we've got these relative clauses with the relative pronouns, we can sometimes drop them. If there is already a subject in your relative clause, you can leave out the relative pronoun. If there's no subject, then you need to keep the relative pronoun, okay? So if there's no subject, you have to have a relative pronoun. If there is a subject, then you can leave it out. So for example, the boy who we invited to tea. So here is our main verb, and here is our subject. So we can drop that. We can say the boy we invited to tea was very sick. We know who it was, okay? We know, ordinarily, we could have who there. But for this one, the boy who came to tea, here is your main verb. Where is your subject? We don't have a subject. We use the boy who. So we cannot drop that. You can't say the boy came to tea was very sick. Doesn't mean anything and it won't work. So hopefully this has explained some of this to you, and it shouldn't be too complicated. And I look forward to seeing what else you can do with relative clauses.